everyone. Happy Wednesday. It's Joe here, and it's another Wednesday live stream. And today we are talking about what is going on with American people and their thoughts with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, our 47th president of the United States, made some very bold claims on the campaign trail, as politicians tend to do. And some of those claims revolved around affordable housing. So a lot of people were very excited to see what changes might come about. Obviously, housing is a huge portion of the American economy, and it's a huge portion of what makes America, America, right? Home ownership. And a lot of people were very concerned about the state of housing before the elections in November, and we heard both major political candidates talk about housing and the problems associated with housing. And some big claims were made, and Trump had some ideas, and he said that they were going to take effect very quickly, and that has not happened. So Donald Trump is getting some bad news from Americans about the housing market, and Americans are rightfully so a little bit fed up with the state of the housing market, the inaffordability of average homes, and the incredibly high interest rates. So today we're going to be covering an article from Newsweek that's talking about how Americans are a little upset with the president in charge when it comes to housing and the lack of progress that's been made. Now, I will say that, it's only been 2 months since he's been sworn in. It would be a little foolish to think that there would be substantial changes that would happen in those 2 months, but he made some promises and people are holding him to them. So we're going to be going over that article. And then we have another supporting article that's going to kind of talk about maybe what President Trump is going to do and how it's going to affect, and what we think that if it's going to be effective or not. And then we're going to have some fun after that. We had a visitor. We had one of our regulars in our live stream, Cackleberry. She submitted a question, and she wanted to know about the different types of property statuses between like pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, bank-owned, real estate-owned, city-owned, auction, all this stuff. So we're going to go over kind of what some of these different statuses mean, and also what that can mean for you if you're potentially looking to buy a home, and where maybe the deals can be found, and maybe which type of status you might want to look after depending on what you're looking for and where you're looking. And then if we have any time left over, I've got a random city generator pulled up. I've got a random number generator pulled up. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick a random housing budget. We're going to pick a random city in the United States. And then we're going to go on Zillow, and we're going to figure out what house we would buy for that budget, what we think is the best bang for the buck in that area with that price point. So we got a lot to cover. As always, thanks for hanging out with me. Appreciate it. If you're new to the stream, go ahead, hit that like button that should be right down here somewhere. Really, really helps me out. Doesn't cost anything. At any time, if you guys have any comments, thoughts, questions, please go ahead, put them into the chat. Really, the best part about doing live streams is being able to interact with all you guys, my live audience. So please don't hesitate. Even if your opinion goes against what my opinion is, I don't care. It's all good. We can agree to disagree. So as we go through the article, if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, do not hesitate to go ahead and put them in the chat. So we're going to get going here, and we're going to put the first article up on the screen, and here it is. In fact, we're going to use this layout instead. Donald Trump gets bad news from Americans about housing market. Yikes. All right. And so as you guys know, I try to keep my articles recent, usually within the last few days. This one came out on the 24th. This one's by Suzanne Blake. Americans might be losing confidence in President Donald Trump's impact on the housing market as majority of households prepare for rent and mortgage rate hikes. Now, rent hikes, that's always and forever. That's perpetual, right? That's one of the downsides to renting, is that you're always going to be faced with the potential for the rent hike, which is usually going to come at least once a year. It doesn't have to, but most of the time, every year, your landlord's going to renew your lease and say, hey, guess what? Your rent went up 5%, 8%, 10%, whatever it may be. But mortgage rate hikes, while we don't anticipate mortgage rates coming down substantially in the next year or so, they haven't gone up. And with all of this tariff talk, with all of this recession talk, actually, it looks like there's potential for mortgage interest rates to actually stay on the lower end of the projected scale. Although, again, we're not projecting any major movement either way. Rates are probably going to hover between 6.5 and 7 for the next year or so, unless there's a major change in things. And all it takes is one crazy person somewhere to do one thing, and things can come to a standstill. So any type of geopolitical event, that's a big one, right? So if we have a war that breaks out, a terrorist attack, major unrest somewhere, that's a great way to get lower interest rates because it puts the economy for a loop. Obviously, when we have times of crises like any of the things that I just mentioned, the money markets and investors get a little scared, get a little wonky. And when investors get scared, interest rates go down because mortgages are like the safest thing out there from an investment perspective. So mortgage rate hikes aren't much of a concern, but we're not going to be really get any relief from the high mortgage rates. So not much help from that end of things. A new report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that households expect 30-year mortgage rates to increase to a median of 7% a year from now, signaling what could be a shift in confidence. And experts told Newsweek it's about more than just, okay, so somebody didn't write correctly here. An expert told Newsweek it could be more than just about mortgage rates, which is absolutely true. It's the whole package, right? We have mortgage rates to contend with, we've got property insurance to contend with, we've got high prices to contend with, and we have stagnant wages to contend with. So home buyers out there, obviously it's going to take a very diligent, thoughtful person that has a plan put in place. Gone are the days of, oh, we were cruising around this weekend, we happened to see an open house, we walked in and actually it's perfect and we bought it. That's not going to happen. Now, in order for people to buy homes, it's going to be a very calculated thing, probably similar to retirement. Maybe not that much future financial planning. Retirement, you're saving for 30 years. You've got a long-term plan. You've got a short-term plan. You're looking at risk. So home buying is probably not going to be that in depth, but it's going to be more than just, oh, let's go look at the home that's just went on the market across the street. It's going to be more than that. Now we're getting to the point where, and it's like this right now, and it's only going to continue to be like this, where you need to talk to a lender first early and understand which loan product is good for you. Do you want to utilize FHA loan, or is a conventional loan the better product? Or is 5% the way to go? Or should you wait and get that 20% down payment? Okay, now we need to find a good agent that knows the area, that's going to represent us, that works with buyers. Okay, now we found the agent. Okay, now we need to start looking at some homes. That's what we're going to see the home buying process continue to be. It's going to continue to be a much longer planned out process where it's like, hey, maybe we need to improve our credit for 2 years before we even consider buying a home. Maybe what we need to do is we need to open a high yield savings account so that while we're in our rental, we can sock money away and have a higher savings rate. And that's, I think, what we're going to see more likely because of all of the pressures that we've already identified between rates, prices, wages, things like that. Why it matters. Home prices have skyrocketed in recent years as low inventory and pent-up demand made it increasingly difficult for the average American to purchase homes. Now, we all know this, right? Unless we've been living under a rock. We know that there has been pent-up demand, and we know that the inventory has been very, very low. And when we have low inventory and high demand in any product, you get high prices. We all know it's been difficult for Americans to purchase a home. Mortgage rates saw a significant uptick after the Federal Reserve started raising rates to fight off inflation. Analysts previously anticipated mortgage rates could get as low as 5% this year, allowing more homeowners to enter the market. However, current forecasts suggest that rates will stay between 6 and 7% throughout 2025 and most of 2026. And I do remember that. I remember talking to some colleagues and we're thinking, oh man, by mid 2025, we could see 5.5%. And that just certainly isn't the case. Now, part of the reason that we're forecasting 6 to 7% rates throughout is because we don't know, what's exactly going to happen with the economy. There's just a lot of unknown out there between the administration, with what Trump is doing. He's obviously making some very big changes in some very short timeframes. And that is sometimes an issue for the American people. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there. And because of that, that's part of one of the reasons why interest rates are slated to stay between 6 and 7% for pretty much the next year or more. What to know. In the new Federal Reserve Bank of New York survey, households expected rent to grow by 8% over the next year. That's, about right. Usually rent is between 5 and 8%, of course, depending on where you are. That's compared to a 7.1% median expectation in February of 2024, revealing Americans might be more apprehensive about housing now that Trump is in office. Renters also said the probability of ever owning a home was just 33.9% in the survey, a decrease from the 40.1% they said last year. This probability of owning a home has been consistently decreasing since 2016. This is a huge issue. This is a huge problem. And boy, I'll tell you what, to lose basically what is set, it's not quite 7, but let's say 6, high 6, 6.8% or whatever it is. That's a lot, to have a 6.8% decrease in people that think that their probability of owning a home, has decreased by 6 points. That's a lot, and that's a problem. Remember, America is a nation built on the tenets of homeownership, right? We're the only nation that has a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And if you're from a different country, or people from other countries, or you've spent time living in other countries, that many economists from other countries, our 30-year fixed mortgage blows their mind. They can't even comprehend how we're able to offer that to people. And it truly is a blessing, because that the debt that you take on, that is what it is. Yes, I understand you're paying a lot in interest, right? We all know the math. If you buy a $1 million home and you have a 5% interest rate, and you hold that home, for the life of the loan, 30 years, you end up paying $1.9 million for the home that should have cost $1 million. Okay, right. We understand you pay interest. That's how loans work. But at least the American people know that their loan and their interest rate is locked in for 30 years, which even our neighbors to the north in Canada don't have something like that. And they're all working off of short-term rates. So the fact that we at least have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is helpful. And to still see that people have lowered the probability, renters specifically have lowered their probability by almost 7% in owning a home, that's a problem. The reason that America has the economy and the GDP that it does is from people buying and selling homes. It's very, very important to the overall health of the United States. Obviously, not to mention the pride of neighborhood, pride of ownership, stronger sense of community, better test scores, better education, better quality of life when you have long established neighborhoods, typically where homeowners have set down roots. Households also expected 30-year national mortgage rates to grow to a median of 7%, both a year from now as well in 3 years. Well, we'll see about that. That 3-year interest rate prediction's a very, very long prediction. So that's way out there. Home prices are still anticipated to grow over the next year, with the survey finding Americans thought they would increase by a median of 4%, up from 3.8% a year ago. However, expectations over the 5-year horizon remain flat, with households predicting a median annualized price growth of 3.1%, the same as 2024. So everybody's just expecting housing to continually go up, which that's why it's important to buy houses, because their value continually tends to go up. I think if we take out, there's 2 years over the 50-year price chart. If we take out 2007 and 2011, the only year where we had a depreciation in home values was in 1990, and it was in 1 quarter, and it was mostly locally concerned to Southern California. So if you take out 2 years, homes go up in value pretty regularly. It's why they're a great investment, which is why all sorts of corporate investors want to own real estate. What people are saying. Nationwide title and escrow expert Alan Chang told Newsweek the housing market has been unhealthy for the last several years. This is true. With unsustainable low interest rates driving up housing valuations for years, The market has been unbalanced for 5+ years now. Yep, I do agree. Just for you guys that maybe don't know the terminology, a nationwide title and escrow. So title, kind of like the title of your car, you have a title to your house, you have a title company that transfers that title and deed. And a title company is responsible for making sure that there's no clouds on the title and that a property, a piece of real property, a piece of real estate that has a deed can actually be transferred from one rightful owner to the new rightful owner. They help facilitate that transfer of that title and deed. Escrow is a third party to the transaction. They're the money person. So escrow is an account. It's the name of an account. Like if you have a savings account, a checking account, you have an escrow account. The escrow officer is the one that collects all the money. So it'll take the deposit, it'll take the down payment, it holds all the money. And then once the contracts are all in place and everybody has agreed on everything and everybody's signed off, then escrow is a neutral third party. Okay, you've signed the deed, you signed the contract, we're all good. Here's your money, here's your deed, everybody's good. So escrow and title obviously have a very, very good pulse on what's happening in the market because they're in the same workflow as real estate agents and real estate brokers. And as interest rates normalize to the historical averages, which is again around 9%, buyer affordability has been much lower than in recent years, which has propped up the neutral to negative consumer sentiment, which is true. We had low interest rates for so long that when we've come back to what's closer to a historical average interest rate, people are not used to it. And, we haven't seen 7% interest rates for a very long time, probably since sometime around the great financial crisis or just before that. So that's a big shock for people. And that's why the consumer sentiment is so negative. People think, oh my gosh, interest rates are so high, everything's so expensive. I'm a little uncertain. I don't want to do anything because everything's expensive right now. Alex Bean, a financial literacy instructor for the University of Tennessee at Martin, told Newsweek, the past few weeks have seen a flurry of news on the housing market, with some data suggesting rays of light and others presenting a not so good outlook for the coming year. While those in real estate may feel optimistic about more inventory and slightly declining interest rates, this data shows that even those factors aren't enough to generate more positivity from potential buyers. I will tell you, as boots on the ground, as someone who is in real estate every day, buying and selling for clients, I will say the pop in inventory does make me a little bit more optimistic. Not necessarily in the sense that I think, oh, there's more inventory, so more buyers are going to flood. That means more deals. But more so from the fact that we're so low in inventory. Any inventory that we can get on market is good. The more inventory we get, the easier it is going to be for consumers to keep a grasp on those home price increases, right? Because if we have more inventory on the market, that means that there's more to go around for the buyers, and there's less instances where there's 20 buyers competing for one home. Now there's 20 buyers competing for 5 homes. Still is low. We would like 20 buyers competing for about 15 homes would really be great. But 20 buyers competing for 10 is certainly going to alleviate some of the pressure compared to 20 buyers for 5 homes. So yes, I don't think more inventory is going to make a huge difference in the real estate market, but more inventory is the first baby step in getting to a spot that's a little bit more balanced, a little bit more affordable. Noel Tassi, the CEO and president of real estate agent platform Ready, told Newsweek, it's crucial to look beyond just rates. Total inventory is up 17% year over year, and home prices continue to rise across all regions. We're seeing a shift. More sellers are entering the market as we move into the traditionally busy season, and buyers are adjusting to the reality that mortgage rates aren't likely to drop significantly anytime soon. Rather than waiting for affordability to improve, many buyers are taking action now, recognizing that rising inventory provides more choices and slightly better negotiating power compared to the hyper-competitive markets of 2021 and 2022. And that is true. As we see days on market tick up a little bit, as we see the number of price reductions to tick up a little bit, as we see more inventory on the market, that should be a signal to buyers that, hey, you know what? I might have a little bit more power than I did just 6 months ago, and definitely more than 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So if you are a buyer that is thinking about, getting into the mix in home buying in this season, now could be a really good time. March, April, May, before the real height of the spring and summer season, inventory has ticked up a little bit. Interest rates have ticked down just a little bit. And there's not a ton of buyer competition out there. So as of right now, buyers actually have a little bit of leverage. Of course, this is all very heavily dependent upon the marketplace in which you're looking in, right? So as we move through this market and as interest rates stay elevated, as prices stay elevated, we're seeing the more hyper-local markets come back to life. And what I mean by that is when we had the early days of the pandemic, when we had the unicorn years of 2020 through 2023 and into 2024 even, we didn't care about local markets. We knew what they were doing. Every single market was on fire. Every single home that came up sold instantly. Every single home that came up could have sold 10 times instantly. So we all knew the market was hot everywhere. As we can continue down this path, we're going to start to see the reemergence of hyper-local markets. So you might have one town in one part of the state or county, and maybe just 15 miles to the east or west or north or south, another city is seeing horrible real estate activity, but the first city is seeing normal real estate activity. And you think to yourself, well, they're only 10 miles apart. What could the difference be? Well, that's what we're going to start to see from now on. We're going to see these hyper local markets start to shift and take on their own types of identities, which, truth be told, is how it's always been, right? It's how it's always been historically up until the unicorn years of the pandemic when everything just caught on fire. Kevin Thompson, a finance expert and the founder and CEO of 9i Capital Group, told Newsweek, Americans are growing less confident about housing. And it's not just about high interest rates anymore. People are waking up to the reality that housing costs go far beyond the mortgage. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, all of it is rising year after year. It's starting to click for folks. Buying a home isn't just about getting approved for a loan. It's about being able to afford the ongoing cost of ownership. Now, he's not wrong. Kevin Thompson's not incorrect in this statement. It's absolutely true that the total cost of home ownership is going up, and it's not something that a lot of people typically think about. However, the one spot that I'll challenge him on is this is nothing new, right? People have always had to brace for the total cost of home ownership. People have always had to afford the mortgage and the taxes and the insurance and the cost of moving and the cost of maintaining their home. That's never changed. Now, the costs of those things have changed a little bit. And I get that that's where he's coming from. That's what he's saying. But it's not fair to make it seem like, oh gosh, there's all these new costs, these new fees associated with owning a home. That's not exactly the case because we've always had to have homeowners insurance ever since the start of the mortgage, right? But nevertheless, it's a good point. More people are a little bit more sensitive to the overall cost of home ownership. More people are paying more attention to the cost of insurance and taxes. And a lot of that has to do with the huge run up in prices. As homes get more valuable, as land gets more valuable, guess what? Taxes get more expensive. And if you're in a state that doesn't have any type of capped tax rate or capped tax amount, well, you could be at the mercy for some very ugly, nasty surprises. Here in California, where I am, thankfully we have Prop 13. So our property taxes can only rise a maximum of 2% per year. So they still do go up every year, but they go up at a pretty predictable and pretty slow pace. And I'll tell you what, if we didn't have that Prop 13, buying a home in California would be probably close to impossible unless you're uber mega wealthy, because our property tax would be extremely high. I mean, they're already high in general, dollar amounts, but in comparison to the valuation of the property, they're actually quite reasonable. On $1 million home here in California, again, property taxes vary by county and state and even city. But here in California, Southern California, if you have a home that costs $1 million, which is pretty average now, if you have $1 million home, you're paying about $1,000 a month in taxes. Now, about $1,000 a month in taxes. Now, there are homes in the Midwest, in other states that don't have property tax laws, where the home is worth maybe $450,000, $500,000, or $600,000, and they're paying $10,000 a year. They're paying not much less than I am. So people in those states certainly need to pay much closer attention to the total cost of ownership, because their taxes could certainly affect their affordability and if the home makes sense for them or not. Michael Ryan, a finance expert and the founder of michaelryanmoney.com, told Newsweek young couples putting off that starter home, families stuck in rental cycles, it's like watching the American dream slip through their fingers one decimal point at a time. Yeah, I agree. That's a great way to put it. How much of this is Trump's doing? It's complicated. His tariff talks and immigration policies are spooking home builders. The housing market index dropping to 42, that's more than just a statistic. That's confidence evaporating. And the housing market index is an index. It's a number that's used. There's things that go into it. The National Home Builders Association has a lot that goes into it. But the housing market index dropping to 42 is very, very low, which means that's the overall confidence in housing amongst consumers and home builders. And that's not good. And yeah, a lot of the reason for that is because of tariff talk and immigration policies. What happens next? If fewer Americans are able to afford home ownership, it's reflective of less economic stability in the country, being said. While inventory may be going up and interest rates slightly down, prices in many major markets remain stubbornly high. And when you consider many Americans who rent are swamped with higher expenses on virtually everything else, it's easy to see why fewer are seeing home ownership as a reality. Being said, hey, make a great point. I mean, if you're renting, right, and you got to pay the $2,700 a month rent for your 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, plus your, crazy car payment, your auto insurance, your renter's insurance, any student loans that you may or may not have. I mean, how are you supposed to save for a down payment? And then on top of that, how are you supposed to save for a down payment in the amount of $50,000, $75,000, $100,000? Pretty tough. It's very worrying because home ownership has been closely associated with net worth for decades. And a reality with fewer homeowners is more than likely one with less economic stability. And so he's kind of hitting on the point that I was hitting on earlier, where it's like, home ownership is the bedrock and foundation for like the financial security of average people in the United States. And if more and more people are unable to afford homes and own homes, it's going to be a problem, not for those people. I mean, it will be a problem for those people, but not just them, right? It'll be a problem for the entire United States and Americans all across the country, because the economic stability of the overall country will just not be as good. Tassi said the uncertainty of Trump's administration makes it difficult to forecast the next 4 years with confidence. This is nothing new. We've been hearing about this for 2 months now. It's just nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows what Trump's going to say. Nobody knows what Trump's going to do. And again, this is not about whether or not what he is doing is good or bad. That's not what we're talking about here. And you can develop your own opinion on your own and your own thoughts based on what you read and see and hear. But what we do know is that he's mixing a lot of things up, and he's mixing them up very quickly. And again, the American people don't react well to large, sudden changes. In fact, most people don't react well to that. It's like I've said this before, the American people, any group of people, especially a large group like the American population, it's like a group of wild deer, right? And you're trying to get them to, you're trying to feed this wild deer. And if you make any sudden loud movements, you're going to spook them. They're going to run away. They're going to freak out. They're going to go crazy. Same thing with the American people. So the fact that Trump is making some pretty loud, dramatic movements in the forms of tariffs and immigration policies, whether or not they're good or bad is neither here nor there. But the fact that they're happening so quickly and loudly is causing people to kind of go, ooh, let's just see how this plays out. And that's when we get a stagnant economy, and we have people that just are not confident with spending any of their money. For first-time buyers trying to get into the market, that uncertainty creates an even bigger challenge, Tassi said. In addition to dealing with affordability and availability hurdles, they're also at a disadvantage because they haven't benefited from the massive appreciation in home prices over the past few years, whereas existing homeowners have built equity as values skyrocketed. This is a really good point too, because first-time home buyers are getting absolutely slaughtered, because at least if you're a move-up buyer and you think, oh my gosh, I have such a low interest rate. A lot of people are in this position right now. I talked to someone today. So, I have a 2.5% interest rate. I'm never moving ever again. Okay, I understand that. But what if you bought your home for $350,000 8 years ago? You've paid it down, right? And now you owe $200,000 on the mortgage, and now that home is worth $600,000. Well, you have a ton of equity, of $400,000 in equity. So what if you have to take a 6.5% interest rate? You're going to put $400,000 down. And if the new house is $600,000, you're going from a $350,000 house to a $600,000 house. Or even if you're going to an $800,000 house, you're putting $400,000 down. That means your mortgage is only $400,000. And your payment's probably not going to change a whole heck of a lot. If you're a first-time home buyer, you don't have that luxury. You don't have that equity to bring in. You don't have that leg up. You have to bring the money out of your pocket. And that's why it is so just incredibly difficult for first-time home buyers right now in this environment, because there's no equity for them to transfer over. And that makes the hurdle so incredibly high for them. So we have another article from realtor.com. I'm going to share this tab with you now. It's going to be up on your screen. And this one is from realtor.com. And this is still from about 6 days ago. Trump moves forward with plans to use federal land to build affordable housing. Now, this is one of the key things that Trump came out and said, this is how I'm going to make a change. This is how I am going to solve, or help solve rather, the housing crisis. Is we're going to free up a lot of federal land, and we're going to deregulate. We're going to make it very easy to build. We're going to make it very cheap to build, and we're going to do it on this federal land so that it doesn't matter what states say. It's the federally owned land. They can do with it what they want. But there's some issues with that. Here is a map of federal lands. I'm going to try to zoom in to make this key bigger. It's not, I don't know if we can see. So the purple is Indian Affairs. So those probably not going to get messed with. Then we have Bureau of Land Management, which is this pale yellow like buttercream, which you see a lot of. BLM land is probably the most ripe to be repurposed into land that could be built on, right? Because we have Indian Affairs, that's not happening. Bureau of Reclamation, potentially. Department of Defense, that means it's military bases or other areas of interest for the military. They're not going to give that up. Fish and Wildlife Service, not going to give that up. Forest Service, that'd be national parks. That's not going to be given up. Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, which we don't even have much of that land left. That was like what? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. World War II, Roosevelt. That was one of his programs to rebuild after the war, get the economy going. That's probably not going to happen. So really, this buttercream kind of color is the area that is going to be the most right for building. Well, if you look at it, you'll notice that there's a lot of it, but it's all in one area of the United States. And it's mostly in this sort of Utah, Nevada, Wyoming, and it dips its toes into California. Now, I'm very familiar with this area of BLM land. I drive through this to go to Arizona and to go to Las Vegas. And which, if you're local and watching, you're probably familiar with it as well. If there's one thing about this land that anybody who's familiar with it can tell you, it's that this land is the desert. I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere, like seriously middle of nowhere, as in like you're gonna have to drive like an hour to get even to like the next gas station, which is why they have signs all along the 15 freeway that's like no services for the next 72 miles. Like make sure you've got food and water, because there's nothing close. So the whole idea of using BLM land or any federal land for that matter, but specifically BLM land for affordable housing, could it work? Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to work, but people typically don't want to live where there's nothing, right? People want to live close to like jobs and cities and commutable areas and parks and schools. And a lot of these federally owned areas, they have nothing. There's no infrastructure, right? There is no schools. There is no utilities. All of this would have to be built, brought in, developed, which I'm not saying it can't be done. And I'm not saying it won't be done. But when we think about, oh, okay, solutions that we could act on quickly, that's not one of them. Because to turn any of this yellow land into something that could be developed and used, I mean, we're talking years. We're talking like maybe even a decade before something starts to get built. So that's adding to part of the problem that Americans are feeling when, they're frustrated with housing. Now, I will say, and again, you can have whatever thoughts you want about President Trump, but for any president to make any meaningful impact in 2 months is pretty much impossible. Trump has made some impact in the economy with all the tariff talk, but again, that was loud and fast and quick, and it doesn't usually happen that way. So, I don't know how much the whole federal land opening is going to do. I think we would have a better shot at appeasing Americans. I think that the administration and President Trump would have a better shot at appeasing Americans that are concerned about real estate by doing something that they could, taste right away. So, doing something like incentivizing builders to build smaller homes, right? Nothing the president does, nothing that anyone does is going to change the housing market overnight or over a week or even over a month. I mean, even if we woke up tomorrow and interest rates were down to 5.5%, great. Interest rates would be lower. And then everybody would try to buy a house because the affordability is better. And then because everybody's trying to buy a house and we still have low inventory, prices would go up and then affordability would be in the tank again. So there's nothing that can be done super fast. I think the best thing that could be done is that President Trump would try to give some type of tax break, tax incentive, some type of tax certificate, something to home builders, assuming those home builders agree to and then actually complete building homes where the MSRP of the home, the suggested price of the home, is in line with the average income for that area. Okay, right? So I think the best thing that could happen that would make the most meaningful impact quickly, because it would help solve affordability and it would help solve inventory, is for the federal government to say, okay, Lennar, KB, Olson Homes, Pulte, whoever you got, whatever home builder you are, if you're building a home, I'm going to make up a county. You're building a home in Blue Lake County, Michigan. It's not a real place. I'm making this up. Blue Lake County, Michigan. And the average income in Blue Lake County, Michigan, the average household income is $74,000. Then that means that you, builder, need to build a home that with the average income of $74,000, those people of that community could buy your new home. Does that mean you need to make the home 800 square feet? That's what it means. That's what you need to build. If that means the homes need to be on, 3,000 square foot lots as opposed to 10,000 square foot lots, so be it. That's what you should do. I think that's the best thing that could actually make an impact on both the affordability side and also the inventory side. I'm sure someone much smarter than me and much more educated than I am could poke holes right through my argument, but I think it sounds good to me. So, but I want to know your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think? Is there anything that the president could do in your eyes that would help alleviate the housing affordability crisis? Is there anything that you think the president or the federal government could do in order to help you buy a home if you don't already own one? Let me know in the comments. The comment section is open, and I would love to hear from you guys. Okay, so now we have a little presentation I'm going to do for you guys. This won't take too long, and this was at the request of one of my very regular viewers, Cackleberry Cottage, and she's awesome. She hangs out all the time on my stream. Cackleberry, I hope you're here. Hello, if you're hanging out. And she asked me a question. She left a comment on one of my old live streams and said, "Hey, Joe, can you please talk about the different types of statuses like pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, bank-owned, RE-owned, REO property, auction, city-owned auction, all this stuff." So we did some research And we're going to break it all down for you guys right now. And we're going to talk about maybe some pros and cons of these different types of property statuses in case you are looking to buy a home and maybe get a deal. And maybe your next deal could come from learning about this stuff. So with that being said, we are going to get this up right now. Bingo. There we go. And I'm going to make this nice and big for you guys. All right. So we have a few different types of statuses we're going to go over. Of course, guys, at any time, if you've got questions, pop into the chat. Love to help you the best I can. All right. So pre-foreclosure. This is the first one. You guys probably see this all the time on Zillow. Zillow loves to call things pre-foreclosure. It's important to realize that pre-foreclosure is not foreclosure. In pre-foreclosure, the homeowner has missed mortgage payments, but still owns the home. And this is important, okay? Because sometimes Zillow and other like default notification websites like Property Radar and other things like that, they'll put a little tag on a home and say it's in pre-foreclosure if someone has just missed one payment. And that one payment could be missed because a check got lost in the mail, or maybe there was an issue with the loan servicing and holiday maybe. So it's important when you see pre-foreclosure, it's different than actually foreclosure. I've had some clients find a home on Zillow and send me a screenshot and they go, Joe, this home's in pre-foreclosure and it's perfect. And it's exactly what we need, is exactly what we want. We want to try to buy it at an auction if it comes up. And I have to tell them, hey, this is only pre-foreclosure. This is in the extremely early stages, and there's still a long process to go before we even get to actual foreclosure. So when there is pre-foreclosure, the lender issues a NOD, or a notice of default. So this is a warning. This is basically like an official notice that goes out. And the bank is saying, hey, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, we're missing some of your home payments. We haven't gotten paid in usually it's about 3 months is when they start to go, okay, what's going on? You haven't paid in 3 months. We're sending you a notice of default. This is an official notice that says, hey, you're behind on your mortgage payments, and we, the bank or the lender, we're paying attention to you now. And if you don't start making your mortgage payments, we're going to start the foreclosure process. Now, the owner may try to sell the home through a short sale if they own more than it's worth. Buyers can sometimes negotiate a deal before foreclosure begins. So I'm not going to get way into the foreclosure thing because we're going to have one right down here. But pre-foreclosure is the first step in foreclosure, and foreclosure is a multi-step process. Usually the first step, pre-foreclosure, and then the bank will say, okay, well, maybe, we'll set you up on a payment plan. So we understand that you're behind 5 payments and you're supposed to pay us $2,000 a month, but how about you pay us $1,000 a month and we'll restructure things. And then when you get back on your feet, you can increase it. And that way you can keep the home. So they'll usually try to do something like that. Or what may happen is the owner might say, okay, you know what? I'm in on some pretty bad economic times, and I lost my job, or I'm disabled now and I don't know when I'm going to work again. I don't think I'm going to be able to pay for this home. And this is what a lot of people did in the financial crisis of 2008. Okay. A lot of people lost their jobs, got laid off, and they saw the writing on the wall. They went, I can afford my home right now, but I'm not going to be able to afford my home in 6 months. So what do? They enact a short sale. Now, a short sale is when someone puts up a home for sale and they actually owe more than it's worth. So they're technically underwater. So for instance, let's say the home as of today is worth $500,000, but you owe $520,000. And you think to yourself, man, even if I sell the home for $500,000, I'm gonna have a difference to bring in. And I don't have any money. I don't have that $20,000 because I'm going to sell the house for $500,000. I owe the bank $520,000. That 20 grand's got to come from somewhere. Well, what happens is that homeowner might go to the bank and say, hey, bank, I'm going to have to do a short sale on the home that you have a mortgage on. Because if I don't, I'm not going to pay it and you're going to have to foreclose. Banks don't want to foreclose on properties They would rather just sit there and collect interest on the loan, because if they foreclose on the property, then they have to deal with managing the property, maintaining the property, keeping the utilities on. They have to hire a real estate agent to try to sell it. Then they have to pay the real estate agent when they do sell. They have to deal with trying to find a buyer for it. Banks aren't in the business of selling homes. Banks are in the business of collecting interest. That's what they do. So they don't particularly want to foreclose on your home. So a home buyer might go to the bank and say, hey, listen, there's going to be this $20,000 gap, but I will pay you off in full right now. I'll sell the house. You can have all the proceeds. Just let me get out of it. Let me get out of it. Don't come after the 20 grand. Take the money. I leave with nothing. You get paid back. You don't get a foreclosure. And most of the time, banks will say, okay, that's fine. Do a short sale. And one of the good things about a short sale is that owner still, because they own the home, they control the short sale. So they get to pick the real estate agent. They get to choose the list price. They are the ones that are reviewing offers and selecting the offers, not the bank. So, pre-foreclosures can sometimes be a good deal, but not all the time. Foreclosures are where you get a little bit more leverage. Buyers can sometimes negotiate a deal before foreclosure begins, which is true. Pros and cons. Potential for a good deal before the home is foreclosed on. Not typical, not likely. More opportunity for negotiations with the seller. This is true because you know you have more leverage because the seller is in a very bad cash position. Can the bank refuse? Dominic, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate you checking out the stream. Can the bank refuse a super short amount? Yes, they can. The bank can say that does not have to, the bank will basically give you the target, right? So when you have a short sale, you know, the bank's going to say essentially, okay, well, between you and the realtor, you know, what are we looking at? And the bank's probably going to know, right? The bank is going to have a rough idea. They're going to go on whatever website and they're going to get a what we call an AVM, an automated valuation metric, right? They're going to go on, look at an algorithm. It's going to spit out a price. And if you know, let's say you owe the bank 550 grand and the home is worth 450, the bank will probably say, nuh-uh, like we're not just going to let you walk away with $100,000, but we're not going to just let $100,000 walk out the door. In that case, we'll foreclose, we'll sell the property ourselves. We're not going to allow you to short sell it. So it does come with approval from the bank. So thank you for that question, Dominic. Yeah, they do have to take the amount that it was sold for, but that would be predetermined before the home goes on the market. So the bank's going to say, hey, you can list the house at whatever price you want. We're not taking under this number. So if you can only get this number or less, we're not going to sell the house, and we're going to foreclose on it. We're going to take it from you. Thanks. I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad the explanation was clear. All right, so let's continue to foreclosure. Foreclosure, this is a simple one. Everybody knows foreclosure, right? Foreclosure is when you have failed to make payments, and you have failed to make payments repeatedly over time. And the bank is going, okay, that's it. We are now doing the foreclosure process. We're taking legal action to take back ownership from you. Remember, the bank does not own your home. The bank has secured the rights to your home through the first deed of trust. So the bank is basically saying, no, you own the home. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, you own the home, but I have financial interest in the home as the bank and the lender. And if you guys mess up, it goes to me. But it's your home. You can choose if you want to sell it. You can choose if you refinance it. You can choose if you want to remodel it. So when foreclosure happens, that's basically the process of when the bank goes, okay, we're taking it back. And they're submitting court documents. It's not really like a lawsuit, but it kind of in that vein. There's legal documents that have to be drawn up where the court's going to have to demonstrate, or the bank's going to have to demonstrate, hey, these are the payments that you missed. This is what you were obligated to do. Here's our deed of trust that secures our interest in the property in this very event. And guess what? They're behind 6 months. We want to start the foreclosure process. And they will. The bank may auction your home or take ownership if no one bids at the auction. So now remember how I said banks are not in the business of owning homes or selling homes. They don't really want to do that. They would just rather kick back, relax, and earn their 6, 8, 10% in interest. But what could happen is the bank might say, okay, well, we're going to foreclose. But before we take full ownership of the home, we're going to auction it. We're going to auction the home. And because you haven't paid us, we're going to auction it and we're going to get our money that way. And that's when you might see a property go to auction status. If the bank chooses to not send it to auction, which they almost always do try to send it to auction, if no one were to buy it at the auction, then that's when you would actually see bank owned, real estate owned, which is going to be the next category that we're talking about. And that's when the bank takes ownership. If you look up in the tax assessor's information, it will actually say, whatever the bank name as the owner of record. And they own the home, and then they can choose to sell it through a foreclosure sale. They can hire a realtor and go from there. Dominic, what else you got for us? If they auction and it sells for more than your loan amount, do you get the difference? That's a great question. And the short answer is no, because remember, if they own the home, if they own it, it's theirs. Whatever proceeds they get, whatever that gets bid up to, they're going to get it. They're going to take it. That's their money. And what may happen is depending on the stage of the foreclosure, what may happen is if it sells for more than the loan amount, the bank might say, okay, hey, your loan was $500,000. That was what you hold us for. Your back fees for your missed mortgage payments were another $8,000. So now you owe $508. Okay, we sold it for $550. They might determine to give you some portion of the difference. That's very rare, and you'd really only have any type of legal stance if you had part ownership in the home. Once they take ownership and once it's foreclosed and the bank owns it, you're gone. You're nothing to them. They owe you nothing. You get nothing. So for all intents and purposes, no, you don't get the difference. Is there potential to have a very rare case where you might get some of the difference on maybe a pre-foreclosure auction or an auction before the bank has taken full legal ownership? Potentially, but that's few and far between. Most banks are in the business of keeping the money. Bank owned. Okay, so this is REO. So you might see this a lot. REO stands for real estate owned. And you might see this every once in a while. REO basically is a home that didn't sell at auction and the bank takes full ownership. So banks list these homes with real estate agents. So banks are always going to try to take the easy way out first, right? Banks are going to say, hey, let's just throw it up on the auction and let's see if we can get someone to buy it. Now, we didn't go over the pros and cons up here. And one of the reasons that sometimes auctions don't always work out, especially depending on the type of home and the condition, is because homes are usually, because competitive process, cash buyers often win at auctions. When you have an auction type of event, it's very, very difficult to utilize a loan. I'm not saying you can't, you can. You can't utilize a traditional mortgage. You'd have to take like a hard money loan. So a hard money loan is when you're going to go to a private investor. It could be anybody that has money. It could be anybody. It could be your rich uncle. It could be your best friend. It could be a business associate. It could be anybody that's got money, right? And they're saying, hey, I understand you want hard money. You want a loan. I'm going to give you a loan, but my interest rate to give you that loan, because I'm going to give you $800,000 upfront, it's going to be a 9% rate. So it's going to be expensive to take that money. So you could use a hard money loan, then take that cash that you got from the hard money lender. You could go to an auction and then you could bid on a property and try to win it. But most people can't afford to take a 9 or 10 or 11% interest rate loan. Most people also don't have $800,000 in cash sitting around, $500,000 in cash sitting around. So a lot of buyers think, ooh, I'm going to go get a deal. I'm going to go look at foreclosed homes. And then they go down to the courthouse. They sit on the steps and they have this auction, and they go to sign up for the auction and they're asked for their cashier's checks. And they go, what cashier's checks? They go, yeah, you got to have cashier's checks in $50,000 increments. And you have to put them on file with the auctioneer, and they'll kind of build you a tab like, okay, so this bidder has $500,000 in cashier's checks on file. That's their budget, right? So if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to compete with those investors. So that's why houses don't always sell at auctions, because sometimes it's a little difficult for buyers to actually facilitate buying them. So when they don't sell at auctions because they can't sell to a cash investor, then they have to go to the resale market, which now this is where some end consumer buyers can find that deal that we all want in real estate. So when the home doesn't sell at auction, the bank takes full ownership. Then What's the bank going to do with the home? Well, the bank can't live in the home. The bank is not going to rent out the home. They're not in that business. So what do? They list these homes for sale with real estate agents, right? Just like any other homeowner that wants to sell would. The bank goes out, finds a real estate agent local in the area, says, hey, we're Bank of America. We got a home in Claremont. Joe, can you help us sell it? We see you're an agent in Claremont. Can you help us sell it? I'd say, yes. Now the bank is my client. They pay me a commission to get the home sold. The good thing about this is title is typically clear, reducing legal risk. So because the bank has taken full ownership, it's very easy to know who owns it. And who owns it is this giant entity that is the bank, and they want to sell it. So there's no issues with title or somebody not wanting to sign a deed or not wanting to close the sale. It can be financed like a normal home purchase. Again, because this is a normal sale, yes, it's REO, but you have a standard sale with an agent, a homeowner, we're doing an open house, people are seeing it, and you can get a traditional mortgage on the property. But because they are REO properties and they're not owned by a sole and individual entity person, the homes may need significant repairs because the bank is not going to do any improvements. They're not going to do any upgrades. They're not going to do any of that. And a lot of times foreclosed homes get beat up in the process. People don't care about their home. They're about to lose it. They're usually in a pretty bad state. Emotionally, they're probably not doing well. Financially, obviously, they're not doing well. If they are in such a bad financial spot to where they can't afford their mortgage anymore, they're probably not affording the upkeep or the maintenance either. I've gone in some foreclosed homes, and I don't know if you ever saw the original like Jumanji with Robin Williams, but it was kind of like one of those houses where it's really old and there's plants growing through the windows. It's kind of crazy. So you got to be prepared for some significant repairs to be made. And banks rarely negotiate much on price. Chances are they're selling it at a discount anyway to try to recoup their money as quickly as possible. So if you try to lowball them or give them an offer, chances are they're not going to bend over much, and they're not going to give you any credits for repairs, and they're certainly not going to make repairs. So just look at the home and assume that you're buying what you see, as you see it, where you see it. All right, let's see here. Can the bank selling also be the new lender, or is it a conflict of interest? Yeah, Dominic, that's a really, really good question. So anytime we get to a probate sale, REO sale, foreclosure sale, there needs to be some arm's length things involved. So no, the bank can't be the lender on its own property. That wouldn't fly. The real estate agent that lists it usually can't also represent the buyer that wants to buy the property. There needs to be a certain kind of a degree of separation, because sometimes what would happen is a bank would list a property, then the real estate agent would make it specifically undesirable. They wouldn't market it. They wouldn't do open houses. They wouldn't show it. It would sit on the market for 2 or 3 months. They'd go back to the bank and say, man, bank, nobody wants your house. Nobody's buying it. I did get a lowball investor from an offer. I know you wanted 800. This investor is willing to give you 650 cash. It's the only offer we've gotten. You might just want to take it. Well, it turns out that the investor that's submitting that offer is working with the agent. So the agent was purposely trying to not sell the property, lower its value so that their investor friend could buy it at a discount from the bank, who doesn't really care or know. They're just like, get this thing off our books. We don't want this asset on our books. It's a liability. We want the money. And then you have a problem. And now you've basically defrauded the bank. And if the bank finds out, you're going to go to jail. But if they don't find out, it could be a money-making thing. Yes, exactly. Do not pass go, straight to jail. That's called fraud. And banks don't like when you fraud them. Funny enough. All right. So now we have auction properties. So these are homes sold at public auctions, often due to foreclosure or tax lien. So this is basically the same as kind of a foreclosure auction, but auction properties could go to auction for a couple different reasons. Usually it's because of foreclosure, but it could also be because of tax liens, right? So let's say you don't pay the IRS. Let's say you own your own business, right? And it's a successful business, but you just decide you don't want to pay Uncle Sam their dues. And let me tell you, I can see how you would feel that way. But nonetheless, you still got to pay the man. So if you decide, you know what, I'm just not going to pay my taxes because I don't have the money, I spent it all, or I don't want to, they'll come after your house. They'll come after your stuff, and they will auction off your house, and you will not get the proceeds. Or they'll auction off your house. They'll take what they need. Then they'll pay off your loan. And then if there's anything left over, you might get some of those proceeds. If you ever watched the movie Happy Gilmore, the plot is predicated around a tax auction of the main character, Adam Sandler, Happy Gilmore, his grandmother's longtime residence, her home of 40 years that his grandfather hand built supposedly. And she didn't pay her taxes because she didn't have enough money because she was a senior on fixed income. And IRS came in and put her house up for auction. So that's kind of how auction properties works. And again, because it's an auction, buyers usually must pay cash only and purchase it as is. So the good things about this is you can potentially get discounts because competition is low, because it's cash only, and it's a fast purchase process. It's probably going to take you, 5 days, 8 days to close the deal on this. But it's high risk. You're not going to have a home inspection, and title might not be guaranteed. So there could be a cloud on the title that could prevent you from selling it down the line. Some properties have existing liens or legal issues. And if you buy a home and there is a lien on it and you buy it at auction, there's a very good chance that you yourself are inheriting that lien or loan. And you need to be aware of that. So you might buy a house for 200 grand and think, oh boy, I got a smoking deal. But there could be an outstanding lien on it for $300,000. And that has to be paid back before you can do anything to the property. All right. And then we have city-owned property. So this is a very, very rare circumstance. City-owned property those are homes taken over by local governments due to unpaid property taxes, abandonment, or code violations. So yes, if your home gets in such deplorable condition, the weeds get so tall, the paint gets so bad, the windows are so smashed in that the city says, you know what, we're taking your house from you. You clearly can't keep it up. You don't have the money or the resources to maintain the house. It has now become a safety issue. It is blighting the neighborhood. We're taking it back. That code violations is extremely rare. It's very, very rare. I've never seen it happen. Every once in a while, you'll get a letter from the city that's like, your grass is too long. If you don't cut it in the next 8 months, we're going to give you a $12 fine or whatever it is, right? That's usually how code violations work. But if it gets bad enough, they can do that. And again, the city may sell these homes via auction or discounted programs. And again, you're going to have pretty much the same issues as the other auctions. Some properties are available at very low prices, and they are ideal for investors willing to renovate because they usually need work, because the homes are often in poor condition because they've been abandoned or there's such bad code violations. Now, this is the one caveat with the city-owned properties, and that's that city sales, they might have restrictions. So like you must live in the home or renovate it within a certain timeline. So the city might say, okay, we will sell you this abandoned home at a hugely discounted rate, but in 6 months, you got to have the yard cleaned up, you got to have it repainted, and the windows got to be repaired so that it looks presentable and is safe. And they might also say you got to live within our city to buy a home in the city in order to cut out, investors and flippers from out of the area. And there's bankruptcy. This is the last one. Bankruptcy property. The homeowner is filed for either Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The home may be sold by a court order to pay debts. The sale requires court approval, which may delay transactions. So this is when someone maybe has enough money to keep paying their mortgage, and maybe they can afford to stay in their home, but they ran up some credit card bills. They ran up some other bills. Maybe it's just medical debt. Who knows? But they need some money to pay some bills. And they're going to go, okay, I filed for bankruptcy. And when you file for bankruptcy, the part of the bankruptcy proceeding could be that you have to sell your home. And if you do have to sell your home, then it could be subject to court approval. And again, similar to some other things we've talked about, if the court says, hey, you owe us 500 grand, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to sell my house, and I'm going to sell it for 300 grand, and that's what we used to pay you back. The court might go, nope, you're not selling it for 300 grand. You got to sell it for at least 450 then. So the court is kind of overseeing, and yes, it's your home and you get to sell it, but the court is kind of overseeing to make sure that they're going to get what they need out of it to satisfy your debts. So sometimes it's below market price if the court is eager to sell. which can be good. Obviously, as a buyer, you know that there's some leverage there, some motivation. There's less competition than foreclosure auctions. Long and unpredictable legal process. Yeah, it's bankruptcy. We don't know when the bankruptcy will be finalized. We don't know how long it will take for the court to approve the offer or the projected price. Liens or other debts may be attached to the property. And again, like I just said, when you buy a property and there's a lien or debt attached to it, guess what? You bought the property, you own the property, you also bought the debt and you own the debt. So something to think about. Well, guys, I hope that was useful to you guys. Something a little bit different. Doing the analysis of the different problem types. I hope it was helpful for you guys. And as always, if you guys have ideas or thoughts for streams and you want me to cover anything, please go ahead, put them into the comments. You can either comment on this video or any other of my live streams or videos and say, hey, Joe, I want you to talk about ADUs, or I want you to talk about this, or I want you to talk about that. And I would be happy to talk about it. We will be live again, of course, next Wednesday at the same time, 6:30. We didn't have enough time today to get to my random number generator and my random city generator. In fact, really quick, I'm going to share that tab with you. So what we're going to do is now you can see it. We're gonna go on this random number generator, and I put a lower limit of 450,000 all the way up to 4.5 million. We hit generate, we get this result. So right now we'd be looking at a property that's 2.3 million. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to the city generator. We're going to rerun some random US cities. Boom, Corpus Christi. So we're gonna see if we can spend 2.3 mil? We're going to see if we can spend $2.3 million in Corpus Christi, Texas. We're going to see what homes we can buy, but that's going to be on next stream. So we're going to cruise around Zillow. We're going to see what the best homes we can buy, the best bang for the buck, given a random budget and a random location. So you'll want to stick around. That one's going to be a really, really fun one. Whenever we crawl around Zillow, we always get good engagement, good viewership. So we will be doing that on the next live stream. If you guys enjoyed the stream, please do me a favor, hit the like button. It should be right down here somewhere, the little thumbs up icon. Everybody take a second. Everybody right now, take a second. Do it right now. We'll pause everything. Put your hand on the mouse. Put the mouse on the thumbs up. Click the thumbs up. Thank you. Now, after you've done that, go ahead and click subscribe right down below. It's totally free, really helps me out, and it helps my channel grow just a little bit. Hey, John, thanks for hanging out. I'm glad you were able to use some of my tidbits. I'm glad they were useful for you. Hope you're doing well, John. I'll see you around. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. It really helps me out. And we'll see you back next Wednesday for another phenomenal stream. Thanks so much, as always. I really appreciate you guys giving me some of your very, very valuable time. I know we're all busy, but hey, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll be back next Wednesday, same time, same place, 6:30 on the channel. I don't know what we're going to do yet for our article. I know obviously we're going to go property hunting, but we're going to cook up another article to go over as well. Enjoy the rest of your week. Be safe out there. Please be kind to others as you move through the world. Just do something a little bit nice for someone. Let's make the world a kinder place. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'll see you all next Wednesday. Bye.